Hello, Culture Matters podcast. We're back again with another 30 days of thought. Before I read the excerpt, here's a quote just for this episode. Responsibility falls on the most aware. Today's excerpt is, do you want to be managed? When I read this excerpt in the quote on the back on page 122 in 30 days of thought, quote, leadership is freedom and unshackles chains of conformity. Do you want to be managed? I think of personal responsibility or the dichotomy, the confusion truly between responsibility and accountability. Oftentimes, I'll hear managements shouting from the ivory tower, banging their fists on the table, metaphorically. We need accountability. What's implicit in that statement is I haven't been honest. I haven't been direct. I haven't embraced the conflicts. Accountability and the I transmutes into an, a general we or an average we. There might be a percentage of constituents within a group that are holding others to account, that are telling the truth the way they see it, that are embodying truth in their behavior. Um, they're integrated. They're exceeding expectations. They're matching their job description. They've taken ownership over their role and others, and where responsibility has been abdicated, they see opportunity lurking in the shadows, lurking underneath the chaos. They notice that opportunity lurks where responsibility has been abdicated, rule four of beyond order. There may be a percentage, but when we hear these statements, we need accountability. I hear I must be more direct because accountability is a consequence of responsibility, the ability to respond on an individual basis. Accountability is given in speech or taken in action. Given in speech. That's not the way we do things around here. Do it like this. Hey, this is how we do things. Hey, that's not that. These are our values. This is what they mean. What you just did there isn't living up to them. Hey, how am I showing up in accordance with our values? Oh, I'm not. Okay, I can do better. It's it's a naturally occurring consequence, accountability, or, that was given, taken, is letting people go that are not living up to expectations. Uh, Taken is people leaving, people quitting, whether it's the new, a term of the 21st century, the quiet quit, slowly slogging off, becoming disengaged. They don't notice that opportunity lurks where responsibilities have been abdicated. They notice they aren't heard, they aren't seen, they aren't valued. They, let's say the top of, top performing people, they are just even almost disgusted by what they see in the society, in the group dynamics, in the culture, in the community, in the company. They have, if a highly competent person is completely and totally engaged in their industry, they're going to over time build relationships, and their results speak for themselves. The results speak as a consequence of their personal responsibility. They will be held to account by the executive search firms calling them and saying, "How you doing? I've got seven different employers for you." Given, right? It's given. The search firms calling and trying to get to know them because they're a hot commodity for their clients. Accountability is a consequence of personal responsibility or respond the ability to respond to conflict, to the world, to change, to chaos. It's a reordering of things. Accountability is given in speech or taken in action. I quit, taken, right? I quit, you're fired. It's the disengagement. There's less, it's almost like no one is being direct with anyone, and therefore the weak skate by, the strong get weaker and more disenfranchised. A minority of people are holding up the organization for whatever reason. And innovation is ultimately what's going to lack, what's going to be affected in a negative way. The organization is going to start solving or servicing its customers at a lesser and lesser degree. And in time, that's going to have an even more nihilistic impact on the company because the purpose of a business to create and keep a customer, Peter Drucker, and we lose sight of our customers and we overemphasize the staff and attempt to start doing things with the team to try to get the culture back when what really needs to happen is a focus on the customer and the clarity of the vision and the compelling stories that drive us into action to embrace the naturally occurring conflicts that occur in day-to-day life. Nobody wants to be managed. Nobody wants to be forced to think and feel and act a certain way. But people are inspired when those around them think and act and speak in a way that's inspiring, that's in spirit, that's value add, that's competent and confident, that implies vision, that implies, that as Peterson would say, on the edge of order and chaos. We want to live on the edge. We want a modicum of security or some sufficient security, but it's the edge between order and chaos that brings us where meaning emerges as a consequence of having to grow, having to reorient ourselves, having to improve, having to learn new skills, having to work out the puzzles of life with other people. It's a part of our human nature to need to live on the edge of order, on the edge of our competence. And that's where continual learning comes in. That's where humility comes in. That's where the tyrant is uninterested in learning. The tyrant is uninterested in accepting the fact that they don't know what they think they know in absolute, that they don't know everything, that their map isn't fixed. The map is ever changing, where it's like those video games where you've explored so much of the world of this online world, but there's this unknown that you have yet to explore. You've got to take your avatar and go way, way, way northeast to see what's out there. Because the map, when you hit your map on the online game, you only see what you've explored. You don't see the unexplored territory. You actually have to go and venture there. The tyrant won't want to do that. That's where that story of Osiris comes in. Osiris, the thousands of years old, I believe, Egyptian story of Osiris stopped paying attention. That implies the story stopped. The story stagnated. The vision was unclear. The voluntary suffering wasn't undertaken. The sacrifice wasn't there. Humility manifested into arrogance, or humility dissipated and arrogance crept in. Entitlement overtook the hero, and the hero becomes rep represents or is in a spirit of anti-hero. And of course, his brother Seth kills him. Of course, he rises up and says, I want what he has with less effort, because who would want to work for a tyrant that stops paying attention, that stops showing up like they once did? So responsibility falls. Here's a note I wrote down after looking at reading this excerpt again. Responsibility falls on the most aware, but title authority does not imply awareness. Humility, curiosity, desire, effort, thoughtfulness do. Authority or title does not imply awareness. It is a call to action for it. It does not imply it. That's where asking questions is so important uh, for leaders, those in positions of ultimate authority, is the questions bring into awareness for not only themselves but the group the information gathered by the subordinate from their lived experience in the trenches. The questions bring out the experience of the person that's now doing what they once did, that actually does have um, right now experience in the topic at hand. Whereas the higher someone is in the dominance hierarchy, the less involved in the day to day they are. And so it's questions that actually lead to the awareness. In the absence of asking the questions, there's not awareness. There is projection, there's perception, there's speculation, it could be a hell of a lot of projection and not even and a confused intuition. And that's the importance of asking questions. Asking questions, they almost filter or exercise the naturally occurring cancer that builds up in an organization as its constituents are confronted with the unknown, confronted with puzzles yet to be solved, dilemmas yet to be figured out and understood, information yet to be synthesized and processed. It takes conversation, it takes communication for people to reorient themselves around problems and to be responsible, able to respond to the problems. It takes communication. For communication to happen, it takes trust. For trust to occur, there has to be mutual respect. For respect to occur, there has to be an equal sacrifice. For an equal sacrifice to occur, those at the top of the pyramid have to be engaged, have to be paying attention, have to have a vision, have to be able to communicate with their words, but through their thoughts, their words, and their deeds in alignment, and for the people to believe in them and believe in the things that they say and the possibility of the future. This sounds like a hell of a lot of work, and it is, but it ultimately just comes down to winners wanting to win or losers wanting to win. Losers, those that are currently losing, not wanting to continue to lose and desiring to win, those that have won being aware of the possibility of losing despite them formerly winning, and those that are in the process towards the goal to stay humble and focus on the tasks and the objectives and the mission at hand. It's about doing the work. I have to do this podcast around 30 days of thought, or else you won't know it exists. And it can be hard. It's hard on a spectrum, depending on the day, depending on what's going on, depending on all the factors that could be either obligations yeah, or seen as opportunities. Quote, do you want to be managed? Mom, there's no way I'm doing it. Johnny, if you don't clean your room, you're grounded. But Mom, it's my room, damn it. What? Did you just swear at me? Listen, if you don't clean your room, I'm telling your father. Johnny sighs. Ah, okay, I will do it. Johnny utters under his breath. I freaking hate her. Why do I have to do this, bull? And so it goes on. The daily struggles of life. The rooms left unkept, the bed stays unmade, our tasks lay incomplete, and our relationships beguiled. What can we expect? After all, do you want to be managed? Whether it is mom, dad, our lover, or our boss, it appears someone is always telling us what to do, who to date, how to live, where to go, what to do, or who to be. Early on, our self significance is undervalued all the way up until our later years in life. From birth, we rely on our parents until old age, when our caregivers watch our every move. Quote, don't do this, stop touching that, calm down, speak up, be quiet. Oh, how we hate being managed. It is no wonder why we loathe 8 a.m. The alarm clock rings. We roll over in our perfect bed and say, quote, just a few more minutes, all the while knowing we must get up. We come to this conclusion not because it's righteous, but due to conformity. We have succumbed to life's labors. Already, we can see this this tension between a son and a mother. We have uh, an entitled, there's this implicit entitlement in the employee in this scenario, and uh, 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 um, a top-down scenario manifesting between the employer. However, without intervention, we'll lose both. And it's an interesting um, scenario that's laying out because it's a challenge to character, right? There's not enough uh, personal responsibility coming from the child, and in as a consequence of the lack of personal responsibility, the mother is asking is holding them to account by telling the truth, by asking. The child is being recalcitrant, is um, pushing back, is demonstrating entitlement, is breaking the rules, the implicit rules of the culture, right? They've been hired to do a job, and they're not willing to do it. Now, in the sense of the parents, the child, the parents are unlikely to fire the child, but what can they do? They can implement various punishments. They can they can it's the parents' job to teach the child how to be in the world, to transfer the wisdom from having once been a child and they become an adult in the world, to learn how the world works so that the child can become that adult someday and get the most fruit from the world, and of course pass down values in their own life to their own children. And maybe that child won't even ec- uh, they won't understand until they're in the parent seat what the values what values are necessary to navigate the chaos of the world, to navigate the dangers of the world. But in a scenario like that, an everyday scenario like that, you have accountability is coming from a consequence of the mother, asking asking for something, and this recalcitrant child lashing out against, quote, there must be a better way. If there is not a better way, this vicious cycle will surely continue and for our full lifetime. Just on an anecdote, in that scenario, it's a child and a mother. This is the value of the father in a completely different energy, a completely different, you know, try getting away with that for long with a stronger, firmer hand. There are going to be some serious consequences. If you notice in the beginning, you know, Did you just swear at me? Listen, if you don't clean your room, I'm telling your father. Father, the father representing order, representing repercussion, representing there will be repercussions for not getting your act together. So the accountability isn't just it's right, it's given in speech, it's taken in action. If you tell the your team what to do and they don't do it, another and there's another level. There will be repercussions. There's going to be marks on your employment. There's going to be marks on your report card. You may get asked to leave. You may be asked to leave your home. You may be asked to leave the business. Quote, if there is not a better way, the vicious cycle will surely continue for a full lifetime. Well, let me let you in on a little secret. Leadership is freedom and unshackles chains of conformity. Form the conscious and unconscious habit not to push, but to pull. Stop telling and start storytelling. As a founder, parent, boss, lover, friend, it is your duty to pay careful attention to your light, your body, giving it and every utterance of your vernacular conveyed. The difference between the influencer and the influence lies in this understanding. If only mommy knew. Mom, there is no way I'm doing it. Johnny, I hear you. Listen. Love, I get it. When I was young, I didn't want to do it either. It sucks. Mom continues. Can I ask you though, if you put it off now, would you have to do it later? Yes, Mom. Johnny thinks to himself, okay, that makes sense. Eventually I'll have to get it done. His mom continues. Friday, you have plans with Robbie and Joey? Yeah, Mom, I do. Ah, okay. I see you have a lot going on, a lot in your head, and I imagine the last thing you want to do is clean. Although, wouldn't you rather do it now versus being late to your plans on Friday? Johnny thinks about it. Yeah, I didn't think about it that way. I will do it now. Thanks, Johnny. I love you. Love you too, Mom. Now that sounds like a Hallmark commercial. Now, one of implicit in this excerpt is a concept of what selling versus storytelling, right? Pushing versus pulling, having taking a moment or remembering the benefit of empathy, of compassion, of reason, of how much we can influence an outcome by thinking before we speak. And there's value there. There's value to that. There's absolutely, the mom in that scenario, um, developing or the leadership in that scenario, developing an ability to communicate at a higher level awareness, right? Responsibility falls on the most aware, but authority doesn't have a causal relationship with awareness. It's humility and it's curiosity and desire and effort and thoughtfulness. And that takes education and environment and all of these things. But I don't want to make this excerpt just about what the employer could do to improve or what the mother could have done to communicate better. Because it's, as McGilchrist would say, it's not an either or, it's an or a both and. It's an either or and a both and. I think that's what he's saying in his new The Matter of Things that I'm reading. It's both. The son hasn't developed character yet, and the mother has to hold is whole, has a responsibility to hold the son to an account. And it's going to lead to a conflict, especially in the absence of a necessary masculine energy that's not in this scenario. And that's, in the future, I should write one about where the father comes in. But yes, implicit is that how we communicate will have an outcome on whether, it's influence versus force. And influence may lead to our counterpart more likely to self-reflect. And that's a consequence of management working on itself and working to improve itself. That's all great. That's important. That's going to be an outcome of being engaged and paying attention and having a vision and being um, curious and thoughtful and working and growing. At the same token, In this scenario, it's not as if the child was living at an all-time high and it was the authority that was lowering them. It's not as if the child was clearly demonstrating competence and truth and it was the parent that was suppressing the culture. No, it was the parent telling the truth and the child being able to handle the truth. So in that case, uh, we have an entitled child and we have a responsible mother that are unable to communicate or come into an agreement. And that's going to hearken to, okay, maybe the mother can communicate in a more influential way, but at the same time, maybe the child needs would benefit from consequences. Why? Because pride comes before the fall. In the spirit of nihilism takes over, and resentment is coating the child's tongue and is creating a film around the child of closeness and arrogance and all the worst sins imaginable. It may benefit the child to have consequences. It's that, you know, there will be people that work for our organizations, with our organizations, that are not working with them. They're working against them. They have their own agendas and they're on their own path of destruction, and they have to be asked to go. And it's part of the leadership to make those tough choices. There are prisons in societies for a reason. People become lost souls of the society and cause havoc and run amok. And therefore, they are there. What do you do with them? What do you do with those that either are unwilling to be redeemed or are unredeemable? Well, you put them somewhere so that they don't run amok. Life is, is complicated. So in conclusion, quote, if if only we knew our management was in our hearts and the key to its ignition is love and the start of the ignition is perception. Every gallon of gasoline is our ability to listen. The pedal is understanding and the clutch is all our questions. Great leaders put themselves in other people's shoes. They feel their emotions and they ask genuine questions to get down to the facts. Great leaders do not like to be managed, and they take that into account. After all, who likes to be managed? Do you? I wanted to add a note that regardless of it, yes, a lesson should be taken that the mom improved her communication in the second bout. However, the paradox of tolerance is the more tolerant we are to intolerance, intolerance rises up, destroys us and itself. That's where the father comes in, metaphorically and maybe literally. Statistically, fathers are clearly important, according to numerous statistics. The literature is pretty crazy on that. If you're interested, go listen to Ian Rowe on the Culture Matters podcast and look into Dr. Will Farrell's work. It's great resources. But anyway, no matter what the mother, no matter what the leader does or says, there may it that maybe give even more gasoline for the fire in a recalcitrant employee, child, executive partner, whoever, to take advantage and to continue to act malevolently in the culture. And there will be times where consequences are the only way to protect the city. And not being able to discern between the two will likely be a consequence of a disengaged, incompetent management. But an engaged, competent management will be able to discern and will be able to make the tough decisions and burden the feedback. And they will be showing the culture what the values are in real time when they make the tough decisions. They're living the values. They're likely living the values that everyone in the culture aspires to. Share this with someone that needs to hear it. Pick up a copy of 30 Days of Thought. Share your thoughts. Read to think. Write to develop. Share your thoughts. Put them out there. And please leave us a review on the Culture Matters podcast, and we will see you next time.